I used to love urban exploration, that thrill of sneaking into places that had long been forgotten, left to rot. Abandoned buildings were my playground. That is until I explored the old textile factory on the outskirts of my hometown. It was a place with a history of tragic accidents, fires, and deaths, rumors mostly. But I was never one to believe in local legends. The first time I visited the factory, I felt the air shift as soon as I entered. The walls were crumbling, graffiti covered the concrete, and shattered windows let the cold breeze sweep through. It was damp, the smell of mold thick in the air. The first few rooms were empty, just a maze of machinery skeletons and rotting wood. But it was quiet. Too quiet. I assumed it was the result of the heavy walls muffling outside noise. But deep down, something didn't feel right. As I wandered deeper, I started hearing soft noises like footsteps, but never close enough to pinpoint. I brushed it off, thinking maybe it was the echo of my own movements. That's when I came across the break room. It was relatively untouched compared to the rest of the building. There were old lockers, some of which were still locked, and a bulletin board with faded papers still pinned to it. The air was different here, heavier, colder. I heard a faint whisper like a breath, and it sent a chill down my spine. I whipped around, but the room was empty. Again, I tried to shake it off, convincing myself it was just the wind. But the whispering didn't stop. It grew louder as I neared the locker furthest from the door. The whispering was too distinct now, like several voices blending into one long, low hum. My hand hovered over the rusted lock, and for a moment, I thought I saw it twitch just slightly. I bolted out of the room, my heart racing. My flashlight flickered as I made my way back through the maze of machinery. The shadows seemed longer now, darker. And those footsteps, they were no longer just an echo. Someone was following me. Every step I took was matched by another, closing in. I turned around, and for a split second, I saw it. A figure, distorted, barely visible in the dark, standing just at the edge of the light. I ran. I haven't been back since. I've heard other explorers have gone in and come out with their own stories of shadows, whispers, and strange movements in the dark. But no one's ever stayed long enough to find out what's truly lurking in that factory. Neither will I. Years ago, my friend Ben and I decided to explore an abandoned psychiatric hospital that had been left untouched for decades. It wasn't far from the main city, but it felt worlds away, a towering, decaying building with boarded-up windows, rusted gates, and a reputation for being haunted. People used to say you could hear the screams of the patients late at night, but I never put much stock in ghost stories. The first few floors were as expected: empty rooms, broken beds, shattered glass, and the lingering stench of mildew. The atmosphere was oppressive, and the silence was unsettling. We made our way through the different wings, taking photos and joking about how creepy everything felt. But as we reached the 4th floor, something changed. The air grew colder, and a deep sense of dread washed over me. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and even Ben, usually so carefree, had gone quiet. We came across a room at the end of the hallway. Its door was slightly ajar, unlike the others, which were either locked or wide open. There was something off about it. We hesitated, but eventually, curiosity got the better of us, and we pushed the door open. Inside was a small, cluttered room. Old medical equipment was scattered about, and on the far side of the room was a bed with restraints still attached to it. The walls were covered in strange, childlike drawings, stick figures, crude faces, and something that looked like an eye. In the corner of the room was a large mirror, cracked down the middle. I caught my reflection and immediately felt uneasy, like I was being watched. Then we heard it, a faint humming sound. It was soft at first, like someone was humming a tune, but it grew louder, closer. We couldn't tell where it was coming from, but it filled the room. I turned to leave, but Ben had frozen, staring at the mirror. His face had gone pale, and he whispered, "There's someone in the mirror." I glanced back, and that's when I saw it too. A figure, barely visible, stood just behind us in the reflection, its head cocked to the side as if observing us. But when I looked behind us, there was no one there. We bolted down the hallway, the humming following us, growing louder. The shadows along the walls seemed to shift, moving closer, as if something was trying to trap us. We stumbled down the stairs, my chest tight with panic, until we burst through the front doors and into the daylight. The moment we stepped outside, the humming stopped. The air was still again. Neither of us ever spoke about what we saw in that mirror, but I've heard other stories from people who've explored that hospital. Some never made it past the 4th floor. Others speak of hearing voices, footsteps, and strange figures watching them from the shadows. And every story seems to end with that same eerie humming. When I was a teenager, there was an old abandoned schoolhouse deep in the woods near where I grew up. It had been closed for decades, left to decay after a fire swept through the main building. No one ever rebuilt it, and the townsfolk avoided it, claiming it was cursed. Naturally, that made it a prime spot for daring teenagers like me and my friends to explore. One night, we decided to camp out in the school. It was supposed to be a thrill, scary stories around a fire, a night in a spooky building. But from the moment we arrived, something felt off. The building loomed in the darkness, its roof sagging and windows shattered, casting eerie shadows across the overgrown field. We set up camp inside what used to be the main classroom, our flashlights flickering against the peeling walls. The night was still, too still, and the silence was deafening. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just an unnatural quiet that made my skin crawl. Then things started happening. At first it was small, a soft creak, a whisper of movement just outside the range of our lights. We laughed it off, trying to stay brave, but the tension in the room was palpable. As the night wore on, the noises grew more frequent. The sound of children's laughter echoed faintly, coming from down the hall. We thought maybe someone was playing a prank on us, but when we checked, there was no one there. Then the knocking started. It was slow and deliberate, coming from the far end of the room. We shone our lights toward the sound, but there was nothing, just empty desks and debris. The knocking continued, moving closer, until it was right next to us. My friend, Kyle, shone his flashlight on the floor, and we all froze. Small footprints, like those of a child, appeared in the dust, leading straight toward us. We didn't wait to find out what made them. We grabbed our things and ran. As we fled, I glanced back and saw a small figure standing in the doorway just watching us. It was there for only a moment before disappearing into the shadows. We never went back. To this day, I still get chills thinking about that night. Others who've dared to explore the schoolhouse have reported similar encounters, footsteps, laughter, and the ghostly presence of children that seem to be trapped in time. Whatever happened in that schoolhouse, it's clear that some things never left.
Thanks for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed the journey. If you loved the twists and turns, don't forget to hit the like button and share the stories with your friends. Make sure to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss out on our next thrilling tale, because there's always a new mystery or adventure just around the corner. Until next time, keep imagining, keep exploring, and remember, nothing is ever quite what it seems.